There we go. Okay. My sobriety date's 10/27/19. My home group is Hope for Today. It meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Through Zoom out of Louisville, Kentucky. And I'll put the information for it in chat when I finish because it's a really loving place for anyone who needs a morning meeting. There's really good quality sobriety in that room. And the arms and the hearts of the people that were there to receive me into the program are in that room. And it's a special place to me. And I'm not nervous. I got a sunburn earlier. My niece and nephew came over and I wanted to point that out and mention it because it's like a badge of the blessings that I get from being in this program and staying sober, that I was on 2 feet today, active and in the sunshine, and that I have family that trusts me around their children, and that I have kids that look up to me today that want to hang out and talk to me about their lives and their new boyfriend. And it's just a fullness in my life that I really didn't ever think that I would come to know. And so I'm a little proud of this sunburn today. Like I'm a little over 2 years sober, but I don't take anything lightly or anything for granted that I have today. And being with those kids was just it was a really good day. If you see me go like this, I've got stink bugs. I live in a log cabin, so pardon that. Anyhow, I'm going to get into my story. So I'm an only child. I had a really great normal upbringing, and my mom in particular, my mom always wanted a daughter. They tried 11 years to have me, and man, when she got her daughter, we were like thick as thieves my whole life. And so I was really well protected my whole life. I had somebody, I was attached to my mom's hip. I always had somebody there with me. I always had somebody kind of making decisions for me in a way, like gently leading me. I had a real friend. Like I had a real friend in my mom, and I was super shy. I was such a shy kid. I was scared to death of other kids, but I was not afraid of adults. Like I could slide right into an adult conversation. I was like 6 or 7 years old. And so I really grew up feeling just awkward and silly around people my age. And so I kept to myself a lot, especially when I was little. Probably because I was an introverted child, I did really well in school because I was interested in what the teacher had to say. I didn't care what the kids were doing. I wanted to know what the teacher had to say. And so I did really well in school. I liked to learn, studied well. I was high achieving, and I didn't cause any trouble. Like I was just a pretty normal kid. And then my senior year of high school, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And within 4 months, she passed away. And so right after I graduated from high school, and even though my dad was in my life, he was just sort of a dad, just kind of around. I was like really thrust into adulthood with like no direction. Like mom's dead, you've moved out of the house, I've got my first job, I've got my first apartment. What the hell am I doing in the world? It was it's kind of a wild ride. And the thing that made that wild ride a little bit easier was that I discovered drinking. I had a boyfriend that was older than me. He was 21. His friends had been drinking for a while. They didn't party, but they were 21-year-old people. And so the first time I took a sip of alcohol, the first time that I drank with them, they gave me a shot. And I thought, oh, I'll just take this one shot. And like, that's it. Like I was scared to death. And that one shot turned into however many it took for me to black out. Like my first drunk was a blackout. And from then on, like through my 20s, I'm going to kind of fast forward through all the drinking stuff because it's all like kind of the same in the end. It's just reckless and it's gross. And mistakes were made, right? But in my 20s, a drink was always prevalent. I mean, anything I did, I was drinking. If I was painting the houses or painting the walls of my house, I was drinking. If I was taking a walk, I had wine in my coffee cup, not coffee, it was wine. I mean, it was like, uh, it was always with me. And I didn't see anything wrong with that. Like, I figured I'm young, like this is just what people do. Louisville is a drinking town. If you don't know anything about Louisville, Kentucky, it is a drinking city. And the neighborhood I lived in had a bar on every corner. And that's where my neighbors went. That's where people went to hang out. That's just what you did. Um, so I guess I didn't really see that I was a heavy drinker. All the people around me pretty much drank like me. Um, and then in my 30s, I met a guy who, um, I figured he was just a boyfriend. He was just a boyfriend. We had fun. Things were fine. And about 5 years in, he asked me to marry him. And I was kind of dumbfounded, and I didn't really want to. And I didn't really know how to say no, because I just needed, like, I had this part of me that needed somebody to be there. Like, I had always like jumped from one relationship to the next. I'd always had someone right there. Um, I had never spent time alone. And so I was just kind of like, yeah, yeah, all right. And that was like the beginning of a really, really, really troubling time in my life. And that was probably the last good year we had together. And from then on, he had some depression and some things of his own that drove him to the bottle. And of course, I'd already been drinking for a while, and so my drinking kind of uh, encouraged his. And we lived behind this bar, and we would go to this bar every night, every single night. And I remember the first time going in there, like seeing the regulars and being like, I hope we never end up at that table. Like, I would never be at that table. And, within a few weeks, like, we are the people at that table. Like, we are the ones that are getting like the free shots passed to us. Like, we're the ones that are buying another round for everybody. We're the ones, like, I don't know, you get the point. Alcohol just, it sucked me in so subtly. There were just all these little times when I look back on my drinking history, that the things that I thought were so innocent and the things that I thought were so characteristic of the age that I was and the place I was at in life were well, the book talks about it. Like, it was no mere habit, it was the beginning of a fatal progression. And I didn't know anything about alcohol. I didn't know anything about alcoholism. I came from just a regular ass family. And so I did not know um, what I didn't know. And my my husband's drinking accelerated and uh, was made worse by the medication he was on, and I couldn't handle that. And so my drinking accelerated, and before you know it, our home is this living, breathing Molotov cocktail. And um, we, we would have like one or two beers with dinner, and neither one of us could stop. And by 10 o'clock, there were windows smashed or chairs thrown, or, like, someone's taken someone else's keys and thrown them out in the yard, or the cops are getting called. I mean, it was bad. It was a really ugly mess. And that went on for about 2 years. Um, and in that time, eventually I kind of just started running away from home, and I started hanging out with my girlfriend who was recently divorced. And um, so she became my drinking buddy, and we got to party. We got to party the way we wanted to party. And I kind of thought, screw it. Like, um, I'm just doing what I'm owed. Like, I deserve this time to unwind. Like, I deserve this time to get wild and, like, whatever. Um, and that went on for a while. And what happened was I got incredibly ill, mentally, physically, spiritually, to the point that I was um, laying in bed for weeks at a time. I had quit my job in the middle of the day, I was drunk at lunch, and I pulled back into the parking garage, and I just thought, I'm just going to tell him I quit. And I worked at a bank. Um, and I had a significant amount of money in my drawer when I just decided in the middle of the day to tell him, you know what, screw it. Like, I don't need this job. You can have it. Um, the insanity, right? The absolute insanity that alcohol takes us to. And I didn't think that that was crazy. I just thought it was self-care to quit my job in the middle of the day. But I got really sick, and I couldn't differentiate day from night. My body didn't work anymore. I started feeling my organs swell. Um, and by the time I got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I couldn't even tell you what brought me to the rooms. I don't know. I don't remember why I started coming to meetings. I suspect it was because I was dating somebody that not so gently said, "Get your ass to AA." But I reverted back to that shy little girl, like that extroverted, mean, bitchy, I'll get my way, you'll do what I want, when I want, how I want it. All that went out the window when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that little girl came back out of me. And I spent the first almost year sitting in the back by myself, not talking to anybody. I wouldn't put my head up. I wouldn't say hello. I didn't want to be seen. I just wanted that 1 hour of peace where my mind wasn't racing and I didn't have to think about my problems. And um and for that 1 hour I wasn't drinking. Now that didn't mean I didn't have alcohol with me, because I was still drinking in that first year that I was trying to get sober. And I mean, I had a bottle with me around the clock. I mean, I drank like a normal person would drink water. So what happened, I think I've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to get into what happened. What happened was I was sitting in a meeting one night, and this man was talking about how no one would pick up the phone for him anymore. He had gotten real desperate, and he had burned all his bridges. And I could certainly relate to that. Like, anybody that had ever tried to help me, I turned their concern for me right around on them, and I was gaslighting people. I was making other people feel like they were projecting their problems on me. And so eventually everyone just left me alone. And and so this guy was saying, nobody would talk to him anymore. And he heard in a meeting, God will never hang up on you. And I thought, oh, here's this God stuff again. Like, I'm not here for God. I'm not here for a higher power. I'm not here for spirituality. I don't want any of that. I just want to get sober. And I went home that night and I got on the phone, and I was just regurgitating the same set of problems over and over and over again to the same people who had no solutions for me, because I was looking for God and I was looking for God-like solutions in humans. It just was never going to happen. Nobody had a solution for me. They'd say, "Laura, why don't you stop drinking?" I'd say, "Well, if you just knew how I felt." And so this person finally said, "Laura, don't you know how to hang up the phone?" And that guy's voice came to me from the meeting. And I was like, "Yeah, I know how to hang up a phone." And I hung up, and I finished that conversation to the ceiling. Like, I was just like, all right, whatever is out there to listen to me, like, here we go. Here's the rest of this. And I just kept talking. And the craziest thing happened. There was this natural pause in the conversation I was having, like where somebody would respond, but there was nobody there to respond. And instead, there was just this feeling of peace. Like, I didn't have to say anything else. It was all right. It was all good. I was understood. And so I just kind of shut up and went to bed. And that was my first spiritual experience. And it was the thing that opened me up to the program. I went on to go into detox at least 3 times until I finally had been in bed so long that my joints didn't work anymore. I literally couldn't walk. And I knew that I was dying. I knew that my body was dying. And there was this voice in the back of my head that has been with me my whole life, by the way. I need to say this. There was a voice in the back of my head I've had my whole life, that when I'm about to make a bad decision, it chimes in and it says, "Hey, Laura, why don't you try this instead?" And Laura goes, shut up. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then Laura goes off and does what Laura wants to do and crashes and burns or hurts people. This voice came in the back of my head and said, call your friends, tell them what's happening, have them stay with you, go to treatment. I don't know what made me pick up that phone, because these friends were people that I really loved and that I had protected from my disease by just shutting them out for many years in favor of all these party friends that I had. And they're like sisters to me. And I texted them and I said, I think I'm dying. I'm an alcoholic and I need you to come stay with me. I'm afraid I'm going to die. One was 7 months pregnant. One had a 7-month-old baby. And those two women took 12-hour shifts staying with me until I could finally get into the detox that eventually led me into the treatment program that I went to. And that was undeniably the hand of God finally saying, you can exhale now. You can stop having all the answers. And you can just let somebody else do it for you. Just listen to these other people and let them tell you what to do. And that's what I did. I went to treatment. I did everything they asked me. I didn't get involved in drama. I wasn't there to make friends. I went to my therapist every chance I got and was like, what now? What now? What can I do next? I mean, I wanted to purge as much of that stuff as I could before I got back home, because it was like, in my mind, it was like, this is my one shot. Like, if I don't take this seriously and get sober now, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to start drinking again and I'm going to die. Like, it was really obvious. And so I made it through treatment. I came home. A woman sat next to me in a meeting one day and looked down and saw this bracelet on my wrist. It's a triangle. And she said, I really like your bracelet. And I'm getting this little God tap right now that we should be friends. And so I hope you don't mind if I sit here. And I said, no, not at all. That's great. And she's like, okay, good. And by the way, I think I'm going to stalk you. And I was like, you're going to what? And luckily we have the same sense of humor. And she's like, I'm going to stalk you. Like, I just really like you. And that woman became my sponsor. She became the woman that I felt the most comfortable opening up to. And I allowed her to walk me into the journey of sobriety. And I took her suggestions, even when I didn't understand them. The God piece, the spiritual piece of this program was incredibly hard for me to get at first. But I knew, I'm going to wrap this up with this, because this is really the most important thing that I have to share. If you're new to the program and you think that the God thing or the spirituality part is just crazy hocus pocus and that you could never possibly understand it, there are so many ways to find a higher power. There are so many ways to tap into the spiritual side of living. And for me, what it took was remembering that first prayer that was just me talking up to my ceiling and receiving peace out of nowhere for no good reason. And then, once I was once I had 30 days and I was aware of my surroundings again, I practiced really little prayers. Like, I heard in a meeting that the 3 basic prayers are thank you, help, and wow. And when I heard that, I was like, I can get down with that. I don't know how to make big flowery prayers. I don't know how to let go of things yet. I'm not maybe even ready to let go of anything yet, but I can take 2 seconds to say, thank you for helping me through that. Or, wow, I forgot how beautiful a cardinal bird looks when it's in the snow. Or, help, like, I cannot get out of my own head today. Help me, like, help me get out of myself. I can take 2 seconds to do those things. And so those 3 prayers I used over and over and over throughout my day. And little by little, I really did start to develop that conscious contact to the point that I didn't have to consciously use those prayers anymore. They were just kind of a working part of my mind. And it really made all the difference. And the last thing, and then I'll turn it over, is that I have a friend that says the word ritual is embedded in the word spiritual. And that really helped me a lot. Having a ritual, having a set of things that I do every single morning to get my day started on the right foot. I say the third step prayer. I ask God to get me out of the way and just make me useful. And it says in that third step prayer, take away my difficulties. And I understand that now to not mean like, you know, make sure that I don't break my leg and make sure that I've got enough money for my bills and like, you know, make sure my boyfriend's sweet to me this week. Those aren't my difficulties. My difficulties arise out of me. Take away my difficulties. Help me divorce myself of my pride, of my jealousy, of my ego, of my neediness, my codependency, you know, all these character defects that popped up when I worked the steps. That prayer is super important to me in the morning. A gratitude list is super important to me. Every day I make a gratitude list. It's hard to hate my life when I have a notebook full of things that are good about it. You know, that's a simple one. I go to meetings. I go to meetings every single day, whether I feel like it or not. If I'm sick, I turn my camera off and I lay my phone next to my head and I go to a meeting. Yeah, so I think that's all I wanted to share. I don't know. Thanks, Kina, for inviting me. This is kind of last minute. But yeah, thanks for having me.